Let's get to the latest headlines on the coronavirus now. That highly contagious COVID strain that we have been watching closely, first in the UK and South Africa, and then spreading to the United States. The first case in New York has now been discovered. Our Anjalee Khemlani tracks all things healthcare for us. So Anjalee, what can you tell us?
Well, we got the news yesterday that New York confirmed its first UK strain case, and that makes it the fourth state to confirm. We previously saw confirmations in California, Colorado, and Florida. And so this really comes as no surprise. Health experts have been warning that since the strain was discovered, and since we saw how highly transmissible it was in the UK, that it will in fact have already been here. And that is what we're finding out right now. A point, though, is that they do think that the vaccines will be still effective against it. Another strain that is of more concern really is the strain from South Africa, which has shown up in the UK, and that is the one that is still being studied to see if the variation to it could be affected, or rather the vaccines may not be effective against it. So that is still a question right now. But as it stands, we know that the transmissibility of it is really what's driving some concern in European markets today with the shutdown in the UK, the lockdown there, discussions in Germany as well about a lockdown. We know that Italy is also initiating some restrictions, as well as Greece. We know that schools have been affected, some since prior to the new year, which could be extended, as well as some that will continue right now. All of this, of course, comes as more attention is on the vaccines. We know that while there have been some that have been authorized, not all of them are available just yet, and not to everyone. So that is a continuing concern as we see the spread, around the U.S. and around the world. We know that yesterday and over the weekend, we heard some comments from Operation Warp Speed's and Moncef Slaoui about the possibility of having doses. And we discussed this yesterday, really about the idea that there have been conversations even before the authorizations about whether or not Pfizer and Moderna, because of their strong effectiveness, could in fact be sort of shifted or maneuvered to deliver smaller doses in order to extend the supply of the vaccines. And so while that was still a discussion yesterday, the FDA came out with a statement yesterday saying that it isn't likely to be possible just yet. The FDA warning that until vaccine manufacturers have the data and science to support this, they continue to say that the 2 full doses are required in order to ensure a proper protection against the virus. We know that they also noted that some of the conversation comes from the data from the phase 2 trials, where it showed that, individuals who had a first dose or half dose and didn't follow up, they were monitored for some time and seemed to have some protection. But just like antibodies wane in anyone who has had the virus, so too does the vaccine likely wane. And we haven't had enough time to sort of study that just yet. So all of this still on the table, but definitely an interesting conversation happening right now. Julie?
Well, and Anjali, I suspect what the answer is going to be, but I will ask anyway. This new variant of COVID, it seems that we have a rough idea of how much more contagious it is, but is it does it lead to worse outcomes? Does it lead to better outcomes? Is it a harsher case of COVID? Is it a more mild case of COVID? I think the 70% number is quite alarming, and everyone is certainly using their reaction muscles kind of more quickly than we did last year when we sort of sleptwalked through the first 10 weeks of this thing. But do we have a sense of what a course of contracting, B117 is like versus sort of what prior variants had been?
Not too much is known just yet. There have been there's been a slow sort of rollout of studies of it. It does seem like it doesn't have too much of a difference. It's just that it's easily transmissible. That's what they've boiled it down to. They wanted to make sure that, what happens, whether symptoms are different, doesn't actually affect it. We also don't know which age groups it more largely affects, and that's another thing that remains to be seen. So, yeah, I'm sure you guessed that was the answer. But we do not know too much just yet, but it is being studied. So I'm sure we'll get more information soon.
Yes, this whole long situation has been quite a learning process, and especially for scientists and those in the medical community. Anjalee Khemlani and those covering healthcare as well. Thanks, Anjalee, for joining us and talking us through these issues.